Welcome back to Direct Station, where the headlines meet what is hidden. I am Kate Carey. If you're joining us for the first time, we're trying to get a handle on the news in order to make meaning of it, think about it from a broader perspective, make more sense of it so that we can tolerate it, so that we can get through it, and really honestly find the highest actions for each of us, the highest places to stand for each of us as a very unpredictable, very unsettling, very rich with possibility period of time washes over us as individuals and as a collective. The heavens have patterns, and those patterns often mirror what unfolds in our society and in our personal lives. I recognize that the idea might be a little off the beaten path for you. I appreciate you taking a shot at this with me. I will assume that if you're here, you are at least open to hearing a bit of it, and that perhaps you could use a break from the sort of everyday way of thinking about what's happening to our world. I am noticing a persistent flavor in most of the conversations I'm having with people this last week or so. There's this unspoken weight that many of us are carrying, the collective exhaustion that we are all feeling, the disorientation, whether it's just watching the government institutions be gutted or worrying about increasingly destructive weather patterns or increasingly unhelpful weather data, or simply just trying to maintain some semblance of stability in your personal sphere while everything shifts around you. I have a lot of people in my life who are walking through loss, who are walking through grief, or who are walking through personal challenges that have come up as a result of what's happening to the country and to the world. We are all going through something: job loss, health concerns, climate anxiety, beings that are passing on, opting out of this particular passage, or even just our fear for democracy or financial strain. There's a shared quality of transition personally and collectively, and the current moment demands a lot from us. Today, we will notice and respect that difficulty while exploring what forces might illuminate our path forward. Typically, we cover some big headlines, and then we cover kind of the big reasons for those headlines. And today is different because the last week or 10 days has not had big planetary movements, and it has not had big headline movements. Like, absolutely, there's been shit going on in the world. Don't get me wrong. But relatively speaking, it has been a quieter time. And so it's not going to stay that way. Obviously, this weekend, things are going to heat up again towards the end of this week and into next week. But I wanted to take the sort of slight breather that we've got going here to just talk about a significant dance that's happening up there, and that is affecting kind of the mood of all of this. And it's a phenomenon that will be staying with us throughout this experience. I touched on it a little bit last week, but I want to talk more deeply about it this week, which is the dance between Saturn and Uranus, forming what astrologers call a sextile aspect. Sextiles are a 60-degree angle in the sky as seen from Earth. So in the big circle of the sky above us, if there was a clock on it and one planet was at 12 and another planet is at 2, you'd have a sextile, or 2 and 4, or 4 and 6, and so on, 60-degree angle. So when planets are at that degree, they are in what is often referred to as an opportunity aspect, meaning they are providing an opportunity or an opening. So in these mad times, we have a few helpful, supportive things that are happening in the sky that are going to kind of lead our way through it. And so I wanted to lean into one of those, again, which is it's an opportunity. It's not like guaranteed good luck, but it is an opening, and it's an opportunity, and I think worth thinking about metaphorically, we're thinking about historically, and we're thinking about in terms of our own free will. One of the things about tracking astrology is that you can have an inside scoop on events like this, right? And events that encourage you to take the opportunity to. This dynamic explains a lot about what's going on in our world today. It's a part of how we can understand the simultaneous crumbling while possibilities and positive change emerge. And it's also part of how we can understand the place we stand, which is at a threshold. I talk about that word a lot because it's just where we are. You know, this ending, the simultaneous ending and beginnings that we're witnessing. So I ask you, in what ways are you personally holding, tolerating, or at least up close and personal witnessing life experiences that mirror the collective madness, the loss, the confusion, the upheaval that we're seeing in the United States and in so much of the world? What we're witnessing in the big picture and in the small isn't merely anymore a binary political disagreement. It certainly started that way, but that's not where we're standing now. It's rather a powerful movement to reimagine American society and America's position in the world. From tax policies to anti-corruption laws and norms, to the support systems so many rely on, to the prices of things, to the science of things, to the focus on human rights and the rule of law, to just, well, base kindness and concern for those whose lives are less easy than mine, right? These changes are not government abstractions. They represent lives upended, expertise scattered, scientific progress halted, savings emptied, homes boxed and moved, a general rise in instability, and a near universal destabilization of things we thought were permanently true. The end of history, right? But Pony Boy told us nothing gold can stay, if you're old enough to remember, or you've got good parents who raised you well, or good teachers. The Buddha taught us that all things are subject to decay and transformation. Sacred texts in Buddhism talk about non-attachment and impermanence, right? Flannery O'Connor reminded us that everything that rises must converge. She did not make up this phrase, but she used it most recently. And so it does. But listen, when the earth beneath us shifts, when democratic norms face unprecedented challenge, and frankly, when a large swath of moral society switches sides, it's confusing. Like the hero in most movies is the guy who does the hard but honorable thing, isn't he? They're the decent one, the honest one, the one who swallows his fear and says, no, sir, that's not correct. This is what's true, right? The one who protects others, who supports others, who rises up on behalf of others who cannot do what they can do. And suddenly we are living in this moment where that script is flipped, where attacking the vulnerable is celebrated, where greed isn't just accepted, but glorified, where cruel humor replaces compassion, where might makes right isn't just tolerated, but it's becoming the operating principle. So this wonderful man this morning talking online about how fitness has been co-opted into like a place where, you know, if I'm into fitness online, I am therefore into worlds where I am being fed intolerant views, right? So they'll sort of get you where you are, and they'll get you in some of these simple parts of life where feeling good or feeling strong or feeling whole, you're suddenly encountering these ideas which are very persuasive. So we've come to the inside of a dystopian novel you thought was purely fictional. And for those directly affected, the researcher whose life work just got canceled overnight, or the immigrant family suddenly wondering if they'll be torn apart, or the person with a chronic illness watching healthcare protections evaporate, or the progressive professional who has built a career on reforming broken systems, now watching those systems and decades of work crumble. The impacts are immediate and devastating. Even those who are not directly in the crosshairs feel the ground shifting because of the collective change, but also the plants are interacting with every body in their own way, according to our own origins, right? So what's happening because of the planets, or what the dynamics that the planets are fostering, it's affecting us globally, it's affecting us collectively, but it's also just coming into our own homes and into our own lives, right? So A, we're reacting to what's happening in the world, but B, shit's going on to with our lives, right? And so there's this ambient anxiety that hangs in the air now. You're hearing it in every conversation you're having. This sense that foundations that we thought were solid are actually quite fragile. I hear it in conversations with friends who previously paid very little attention to politics. I hear it in conversations with young people, including my adolescent and post-adolescent children, who are shockingly accepting of what is unfolding, having never seen Schoolhouse Rock, right? never really bought into the illusions that we had about what was stable in this world. I feel it in my own body when I read the morning paper, right? And I'm deciding every few articles that I'm not up for the details of that one today. It's enough that I know the big picture. Have you noticed how it shows up for you physically? The tensions in your shoulders, the disrupted sleep, the strange dreams, the moments when you catch yourself holding your breath. our bodies know what's happening, even when our minds try to normalize it all. We do carry on. One of my favorite contemporary astrologers, this guy named Austin Coppock, has been saying for a while that May, in America in particular, but globally certainly, would feel like the morning after the carnival leaves town. like me walking through the devastated fairgrounds, finding bits of clown costume and old food and odd objects, and some general party debris, such as empty bottles or cartons. Austin says, Austin's been saying for about a year that in May of 25, we'll be sorting through it, kind of wandering around, taking in all that's happened. And so we are, friends. So we are. If you're finding this period overwhelming, what's happening across the globe and what's happening in your world, that's not weakness. It's an appropriate response to extraordinary circumstances. There's a break in the action, which allows us to walk around the fairgrounds, noticing the debris. But the weight that we're carrying is not imaginary. The anxiety is not unfounded. The grief isn't disproportionate. Your body is telling you something important about the moment we're in. Yet within this acknowledged difficulty, the celestial dialogue between these two planets, Saturn and Uranus, suggests something important. Perhaps this painful transition carries purpose beyond random suffering. What if we're experiencing necessary dissolution that precedes new creation? I talk about this a lot. And I talk about this a lot because it's happening because of several different phenomena up there, right? Like it's just the theme in the sky for 2 years. So it's not just me beating a dead horse. It is me saying over and over again, there's examples in the real world and there's examples in the sky that we are experiencing these two things simultaneously. So, and I do this not to minimize loss, but to locate that loss within a larger context of transformation. Think about metamorphosis, that miraculous process where a caterpillar doesn't just grow wings, but actually dissolves into this protean soup inside the chrysalis before resembling into something entirely new. From the caterpillar's perspective, that dissolution must feel like death. In a way, it is the death of one form to allow the birth of another. Or I think too of the phoenix, right? And in particular, I think of in Harry Potter, the humor that Dumbledore had, the guy that owned the phoenix, had about his phoenix. And the just common, like casual understanding that the two of them had, that periodically this bird was going to get really tired and start falling apart and burst into flames and be born anew from the ashes as this tiny baby bird, right? This like casual, like, oh God, go on with it. Get on with your rebirth, would you please, right? Like this casual acceptance of the fact that this is how life works. Forgive the Harry Potter reference if that's not your cup of tea. It's certainly mine, and it will come up periodically. But the Saturn-Uranus sextile suggests that we might be in a similar process collectively. Not just changing at the surface level, but transforming at a structural level, right? So it's not like the butterfly goes into the chrysalis and changes clothes like he's backstage, right? And puts on a new outfit. The whole thing reforms. Same with the phoenix. That right there might be the opportunity in the 60-degree angle that these two are sitting at. The sextile also implies that what feels like a death in all of us, our certainties, our accomplishments, our ties, our knowledge, our wisdom, even where we thought we would be living, it's all falling into that protean soup. So we've got two follow-up news items that I want to include here to add to the fullness of that picture. The first is, you don't need me to recite the horrible things that are happening, right? But what I do want to point out is that a couple things. One is the election in Romania that happened yesterday. You remember how we celebrated a few episodes ago that the would-be new right leaders in both Australia and Canada suddenly crashed and burned, right? They were very popular. They were on the rise. Look, they were going to win their elections. We had an inauguration in the United States. We had a bunch of really shitty behavior in the United States. And then both Canada and Australia, one after the other, said, actually, I know I thought I was going to vote for that guy, but he's like this baby Trump, and I don't want that for our country. I'm seeing what it is now that it's unfolding in the US, and I don't want that for us, right? And we looked too at a first-round election in Romania where the candidate celebrated by Putin and promoted by Putin's propaganda took about 42% of the vote. But we also noticed then that the two pro-democracy candidates had about the same amount combined.
So this guy won because he had all of it. But there were two behind him that had half and half each at about the same levels. And we're staring at that first round result thinking maybe there too, we might see hope if we squint hard enough. To be honest with you, I was afraid that I was feeling that I was being delusional to see hope in that story. But it worked. The reasonable people combined forces in Romania, and 53% of them, we don't see numbers like that very often, 53% of them said, no, we're not going to do that here. We're going to keep going in this other direction, in this democracy forward direction. So these two factions, these two pro-democratic factions came together in order to defeat this guy. So in our world, that would be like AOC and Liz Cheney running, both of them getting 20% each, while the fascist gets 40 something, and them agreeing that one of them would run. And then the other one's people getting behind that one, like all of AOC's people getting behind Liz Cheney, or all of Liz Cheney's people getting behind AOC and being on the same side in the US. Not just the two people, but all the wings, right, that they represent coming together and voting to overcome hateful hate. And well, it happened in Romania, of all places. That is just one piece of happiness. And then I just have one postscript to culminate my moderately obsessive Pope coverage over the last few months. So he held his inaugural Sunday Mass yesterday, which was attended by J.D. Vance and a variety of other dignitaries. And in front of that audience, he said, loud and proud, "You cannot follow both Christ and the cruelty of kings. A leader who mocks the weak, exalts himself, and preys on the innocent is not sent by God. He is sent to test you, and many are failing." So not being a follower of Christ myself, I, of course, insert similar constructs to understand what the man is saying. And it's simply that our spirituality is our moral center. Cruelty that we're witnessing is not aligned with spirit. It is, if anything, a test by spirit. And when we are tested, and we all will be, we must resist the easy way, the harmful way, the way that has us drunk on power and harming anyone who's not. So these things, these signs, the Pope and his bravery speaking truth to power, right, with J.D. Vance in the audience, and that the citizens of Romania informed and critical enough to choose freedom. These, friends, are the wings at our back as we start to think about emerging from our chrysalis. Okay, so why is it like this, though? Why does it have to be like? I'm about to describe the role of planets and the things they tend to affect as if it's true. I do this not because it's a new belief system for you, but because planets observed when correlated with events on Earth have come to, over centuries, have a commonly understood set of characteristics in a fairly mundane way. Okay, it's not a new spirit world for you, though respecting it draws me personally closer to believing in and wanting to be in alignment with spirit. But the events alone are mundane and simple and persistent and void of spiritual system, right? Like that's a really important thing for you to understand here. It's persistent across cultures, across enough human cultures and regions that we can sort of rely on what they mean. Enough time has been spent by ancients and contemporaries, famous philosophers you've heard of, and wildly popular 21st century scholars you have never heard of, have done the work, laid down the record for us to just make claims about what bodies and parts of the sky and angles tend to affect. So when I make claims about these things, I am saying them not like they're a new fantasy world for you to join or not join, buy the trading cards and memorize the stats. I'm saying it's a world that's there doing its thing, and we can find validation and hope and warning written in the sky if we choose to look. So with all those caveats, I want to tell you that Saturn represents boundaries and form, the architect of structures that withstand time. We can see Saturn's presence in the rise of institutions, traditions, established hierarchies, societal frameworks. Saturn highlights and affects stability, durability, proven methods. I like to think of Saturn as a stern but benevolent grandpa. He's like this old grump who's annoyingly pretty much always right. He asks, what's been tested? What can we rely on? What foundations will support us? So Saturn embodies authority, discipline, and social contracts. Saturn is stability. We could use some of that right now, right? So upon Grandpa's hard work and respect for integrity, we can live safely in a world he governed. And then there's Uranus, the cosmic disruptor and the revolutionary force. Where Saturn preserves, Uranus transforms. I see Uranus as my loving and kind of racy gay uncle. This is not a stereotype of all gay men as racy, please. We all know enough seriously Saturnian gay men to know this. But there is an archetype within gay popular culture and in the gay community and in my community of this impish wild child, right? Where a person who is actually a fully fledged adult, but who gets the big picture and does really fun things anyway, right? So does that resonate with you? You can ignore it if it doesn't. When Uranus is on the move or sits at important angles, he rules sudden breakthroughs, radical departures, unexpected innovations. Uranus questions everything Saturn holds sacred, asks, why these limitations? Who benefits from this arrangement? What possibilities lie beyond this established set of boundaries? Right, so Uranus governs technological leaps, social revolutions, paradigm shifts that arrive like lightning strikes. When Uranus causes something wild, I feel this wink coming from the sky and like a wry smile. Like, what do you think? Was it too dramatic? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's for the best? You like what I did there? And I feel that way about Uranus because Uranus has like a happy place in my chart. A lot of people don't feel that way about sudden change or even, you know, sort of sparkly sudden moves because of where Uranus sits in their chart. But it's sort of central to me and comfortable to me, so I like it. So it's a thing to ask yourself, you know, sort of how do you react to sudden change? But typically these energies of the grumpy, disciplined grandpa and the unpredictable force operate at cross purposes. This is so in the mythology of these characters. I'm not going to get too far into that today, but it is part of the story of these two characters. So during 21 and 22, they formed what's called a square aspect, a 90-degree angle. Not the 60 that they're in now, but a 90-degree angle. And that created intense friction. So think about that period. Pandemic restrictions versus personal freedom, right? Increasing polarization, institutional authority under fire from all sides. Lots of like breaking out of the system, of the strictures of the system. So classic conflictual energy between I got to get out of here and you got to be safe, right? So what's happening now is different. Those two are now at a sextile, which is a much easier angle. And it's got 3 exact hits because planets are going to go forward, backward, forward, say the word dance. But so there's these 3 hits. One was back in April of this year, another's coming in August of this year, and then the last one is in January of next year. So we're kind of in the middle of the dance. They're not too close together now, but they're certainly still in range. And so the whole time is just a bit of madness, predicted and foreseen madness, I should say, that we've been warned about for centuries. And this aspect is a big part of why folks who know the sky knew it was going to get weird. Part of the weirdness that was foreseen when looking at these patterns and looking at how several patterns would converge in this 25-26. Part of it is caused by the fact that both of them are in the process of moving neighborhoods at the same time. Remember that vocab word ingress? It means I'm changing from one skyland to another. So if the sky is divided into 12 sections, again, much like a clock or a sundial, these things are all connected and they're at 12 and 2. Well, they're moving now into 11 and 1, right? So they're like this, and then in that same pattern, they're kind of moving like that. Does that make sense? So they're still maintaining this approximate angle. They're going to get it exact again in a bit, but they're maintaining it almost exactly for months and months and months. And while they maintain it, they're both holding suitcases and planning to reorient to entirely new homes, right? So I'm at this angle with you and I'm personally changing at the same time, right? So we're both in transition and we're related at the same time. We're in relationship. I'll get into the Skylands more thoroughly another day, but I bring it up now to say this move, 2 moves, while maintaining this powerful angle is big news. So they're exchanging this sort of cosmic handshake at this pivotal juncture. We've got so much else going on. And if you've listened to me at all, you know some of those other characters, but this is an important set of variables that we're dealing with through this time. So they're up there exchanging this cosmic handshake at this pivotal juncture, suggesting potential collaboration between forces of preservation and transformation. The sextile doesn't guarantee harmony, it merely offers opportunity. There's other angles that are like, oh, that's going to work out well. This one's not like that. It's not a square. It's not the like, let's fight, but it is it's an opening. So unlike other aspects that force conflict or create effortless flow, a sextile presents possibility. And that requires conscious engagement. It suggests perhaps these opposing forces could find productive dialogue. To translate that into the personal, perhaps this chaos is going to produce new structures I can count on. Perhaps the upheaval is leading me to forge a more stable path for myself in whatever aspects of life I'm finding most impacted. Right? So we're witnessing a moment where structure and revolution might collaborate rather than simply oppose each other. The challenge before us, though, isn't choosing between tradition or innovation, but rather discovering how they might inform and strengthen each other during this profound transitional period. When we rebuild, what will we imagine and create anew? And what will need to remain true from the past, from the original structure of the thing? Perhaps even more true, or true with more integrity. Okay, so if we're in this protean soup moment, let's look at other historical periods that can give us a glimpse of how this process has played out before, this evolution has played out before. Back in the 1850s, we had a Saturn-Uranus sextile while the Victorian age was in full swing. So think about it. Trains, telegraphs, radically changing how people connected, how people traveled, who could be where by when. Darwin's working on his Origin of the Species. It's a moment when revolutionary ideas weren't just blowing things up, but finding their way into the culture, right? So changing it from within, kind of like what we're experiencing now. Old structures, old ways of being undone, and new ways of living, of communicating, of thinking, how governing are transformed. The sextile between Saturn and Uranus in 1966 and 1967, the heart of the 60s, offers an even clearer picture of what we're facing today. Yes, there is incredible revolutionary energy. We're all very aware of that. The formation of the Black Panther Party, the anti-Vietnam protests, the hippie counterculture, Summer of Love, right? But what's often overlooked is how much institution building was happening alongside the disruption. Probably, frankly, not in the light of the disruptors themselves. The civil rights movement isn't just marching in the street and attracting all that attention, right? There's drafting of legislation. There's creating legal strategies, building educational and economic institutions within communities. The National Organization for Women, NOW, you may have heard of it, wasn't just challenging the patriarchy. It was creating a formal organizational structure, developing leadership training, and crafting policy agendas for women. Even the counterculture communes were establishing their own systems of governance and sustainability. The revolutionary energy is finding structure, finding a home within the system while changing it. Right, so getting more grown up as a disrupting force. So not just throwing eggs at the TV, right? Not just screaming at the back of the auditorium, but rather having grown up, formal, sort of institution creating or institution reckoning intervention, how it's been and what it could be. The disruption wasn't just tearing things down, it was building new forms simultaneously. Look at the Voting Rights Act implementation or the creation of the Equal Opportunity Commission. Revolutionary ideals becoming codified into institutional frameworks. That's the Saturn-Uranus sextile at work. Not just rebellion, but reformation. There's another sextile in the late 80s where you see the fall of the Soviet Union and the wildly impactful rise of the use of personal computers. The old rigid structures crumble. We have new ways of talking to each other. We have new ways of thinking about the global nature of things. Digital technologies started weaving themselves into our lives, not separate from society, but becoming the new infrastructure. That infrastructure has in many ways become a poison, right? So we are now at the next cycle of needing to reimagine what that infrastructure could look like, what regulation could look like that might protect us and our children in this new era. Even the collapse of the Soviet system in the late 80s, it's not just destruction, it's involving the creation of new constitutional frameworks, new economic systems, new social organizations emerging from the dissolution. Were they permanent? Were they stable enough? Were they effective enough? Did they take good enough care of the people? No. So they fell apart again later. This is also a warning inside the invitation of the Saturn-Uranus sextile. What we build next has to be thoughtful, has to have integrity, and has to, for heaven's sakes, take care of everybody. Everybody. This is what we're talking about with the chrysalis, right? We're not just talking about destroying and starting over from scratch. We are in the gooey, messy, transformative in-between space, the old forms dissolving, but their essential elements recombining into something new out of that soup, right? And that's the hopeful read here, because each of the periods had their share of messiness and pain, but they also show us that humanity has navigated these threshold moments before. We say all the time how we are in unprecedented times, and surely we are, but every part of the unprecedented nature of this has happened before, right? So if we take each variable apart and look at what it's done, we are in a position to understand ourselves, to understand our moment, to understand what's possible. We have stood at these crossroads where so much is ending and beginning at the same time before. So when we feel that disorientation, that collective exhaustion that we've talked about, maybe we can take some comfort in knowing that we're part of a larger rhythm. The chaos has a pattern to it. The protean soup is doing exactly what it's supposed to do before reassembling into something new that honors both stability and change. When you're up to your knees in the soup, though, or up to your eyeballs, it's hard to stay present in the big picture. But to be honest with you, it's certainly one of the main reasons I'm trying to do this is to create a conversation, to foster a conversation where we can notice the big picture, honor our pain, honor what we're living through, honor how brutal it is to be alive in the midst of this, but also celebrate the incredible beauty, the incredible gift, the incredible opportunity. So how do I find and keep a sense of personal agency while the world unfolds in a way that makes me feel so small? That's the question. The Saturn-Uranus sextile suggests our current task involves integration rather than opposition, finding equilibrium between stability and adaptability, between necessary foundations and evolutionary possibility. Neither rigid adherence to crumbling structures nor chaotic abandonment of all form serves us now. It's gonna have to be a little bit of both. At practical levels, this manifests as creating personal anchoring practices while maintaining flexibility in a shifting landscape. Are you noticing yourself, stabilizing yourself, anchoring yourself by finding new community, new comforts, new humans, new practices, new texts, new podcasts, new structures? Are you watching as your own body reaches for what is stabilizing, reliable, clear, persistent? Are you finding yourself getting slightly more attached to ritual and rhythm in your daily life? By that, I mean, are you having the same breakfast? Are you having the same walk? Are you having the same Thursday brunch? Brunches don't often happen on Thursdays. Are you having the same Thursday happy hour? Right? That's your body responding to these bodies. That's your body saying, okay, all right, you got some chaos for me. I now accept this chaos as a feature of this time and not a bug. And in the face of that, I'm going to reach for what remains that is solid. And if it's nothing, I'm going to talk to my best friend every Sunday night, or I'm going to have regular plans with this set of people, or I'm going to craft something new, some new structure, some new idea, some new certainty to find my way through this madness. That's beautiful. Most importantly, this aspect reminds us of our agency, of our capacity to consciously engage with evolutionary processes rather than experiencing ourselves as passive recipients of external forces. I hesitate to use this word, but I do think it's relevant here. We are not victims of events, right? Even the assholes who are causing so much pain for people. We are not their victims. We are all present in this play, in this drama unfolding at this time. They are causing themselves as much harm as anybody else, right? Like, it's not going to work out for them. You don't get to behave this way and, you know, reach enlightenment in this lifetime. Like, it's not how it works, right? Like, they will experience suffering as a result of what they're doing. And it's not personal, right? Like, they're not harming us because they know us. So to stay present in the reality and to avoid occupying the victim place for too long by stabilizing, by saying, fine, I see your chaos, I see your harm, I see your destruction, I see how it makes me feel small, I see how I lose confidence, I see how I feel like I'm falling apart sometimes. But in the face of that, I'm going to create community, stability, ritual, routine that I know I can count on and lean into in this time. I want to stay here. I want to be here for this, right? You are here on this planet with these people at this time for a reason. Throughout history, ordinary individuals have preserved essential knowledge during times like this, during institutional collapse. Or ordinary individuals have maintained cultural continuity through social disruption or planted seeds for future flourishing amid apparent devastation. Look at what the Black Panthers did. Look at what Now did. This might manifest as documenting disappearing expertise. It might manifest as establishing micro-communities of mutual support. It might manifest as maintaining cultural and intellectual traditions from your own people that are now facing extinction. It might manifest as being part of the safe harbor for people who are under direct assault. Remember that human experience consistently demonstrates how periods of greatest challenge generate unprecedented creativity. So something that is rising in you to be created, to be fed, to be met, is being informed by this chaos, right? So connection, collective resilience, like these things are rising in response to the chaos. That's why I'm saying this guy, this gay uncle is here to cause good stuff in us, even if we hate sudden change. We stand in a lineage of ancestors who have navigated comparable transitions, finding meaning and purpose amid apparent dissolution. And throughout those transitions, humanity has consistently preserved wisdom that illuminates our darkest moments. We can turn back and look at what has been written in times like this before us. Countless spiritual and philosophical traditions remind us to notice those working towards healing and restoration when destructive forces seem overwhelming. Think of Princess Leia, for heaven's sakes. Right? This simple reorientation of attention reveals collaborative networks forming precisely when they're most needed. Give yourself permission to be part of what happens in response to this. Know that it'll be minds on the planet now who craft the response, who craft the world we will live in when it's over. Dude, why can't that include you and your vision for how we could be? Saturn is telling us that it is time to get to work on what we want and what we need now in the face of chaos, or perhaps making friends with and welcoming and reacting in a productive way to the chaos, to the drama. I see your drama and I raise you one stability. Amid institutional dismantling, thousands mobilized to document, preserve, and rebuild. Scientists ejected from American government agencies are establishing alternative research networks or relocating to other, more welcoming nations. Experts at the national level are being recruited heavily by state-level agencies. Local weathermen are being reframed as heroes, the heroes that they once were, as national data becomes less and less reliable. Europe and the UK are finding their way back to productive partnerships. They're having a summit today, their first formal tete-a-tete since Brexit. Academic institutions are collaborating and joining forces to create democracy defense initiatives, to preserve scholarly knowledge and democratic norms outside government frameworks. Indigenous-led land conservation efforts are gaining recognition and funding from mainstream environmental organizations. State-level coalitions are combining forces to think about how to protect and uplift education as it is under assault and being systematically defunded at the national level. Right? We're blending traditional knowledge with modern approaches. You have got regional climate efforts in the Northeast and the Northwest, where states and communities are coming together to build and foster new and more sustainable models for what comes next. Tech developers are creating open source decentralized platforms to archive and protect scientific data threatened by all this interference. Rural hospital systems are developing telehealth networks to maintain healthcare access despite funding cuts. Local journalism is being revitalized. Efforts merging established investigative traditions with new community-supported business models. Buddhist philosophy offers valuable perspective about embracing rather than avoiding difficult transitions, suggesting that moving forward towards uncomfortable truths creates unexpected liberation. The Saturn-Uranus sextile echoes this teaching, inviting us to find freedom, not through escaping structure, but through transforming our relationship with it. Many indigenous wisdom traditions speak to the importance of maintaining relationship with nature and nature's cycles during societal disruption. Be outside, listen to the wind. These teachings emphasize how periods of disillusion inevitably precede renewal, how darkness contains seeds of rebirth, how collapse creates space for emergence. These perspectives provide crucial orientation during times when conventional institutions lose their coherence, lose their reliability. Contemporary systems theorists describe how complex adaptive systems periodically require disruption to evolve beyond existing limitations. Established structures eventually reaching capacity constraints, necessitating reorganization at higher complexity levels. This perspective frames institutional collapse not as a failure, but as prerequisite for evolving more adaptive, responsive organizational forms. In her beloved text, When Things Fall Apart, Tibetan Buddhist says, only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. She also says this, life is glorious, but life is also wretched. It is both. Appreciating the gloriousness inspires us, encourages us, cheers us up, gives us a bigger perspective, energizes us. We feel connected. But if that's all that's happening, we get arrogant and we start to look down on others. And there is a sense of making ourselves a big deal and becoming really serious about it, wanting it to be like that forever. The gloriousness becomes tinged by craving and addiction. On the other hand, wretchedness, life's painful aspect, softens us up considerably. Knowing pain is a very important ingredient of being there for another person. When you are feeling a lot of grief, you can look right into somebody's eyes because you feel you've got nothing to lose. You are just there. The wretchedness humbles us and softens us. But if we were only wretched, we would all just go down the tubes. We'd be so depressed or discouraged or hopeless that we wouldn't have enough energy to eat an apple. Gloriousness and wretchedness need each other. One inspires us, the other softens us. They go together. Again, that was Pema Chodron. Each of these wisdom traditions recognizes that transformation rarely progresses linearly or comfortably. Revolutionary periods feel disorienting precisely because they inhabit the threshold between dissolving and emerging. The Saturn-Uranus sextile ultimately invites us towards new social formations that integrate stabilizing foundations with evolutionary adaptability, not regression to idealize past arrangements, but evolution towards something, towards organizational form that integrates ancient wisdom and the possibilities that are emerging. Ray Bradbury, who I cannot get enough of right now, said this hopeful thing about what's possible when destructive forces rise. He says, there was a silly damn bird called a phoenix back before Christ. Every few hundred years, he built a pyre and burned himself up. He must have been the first cousin to man. But every time he burnt himself up, he sprang out of the ashes. He got himself born all over again. And it looks like we're doing the same thing over and over. But we've got one damn thing the phoenix never had. We know the damn silly thing we just did. We know all the damn silly things we've ever done. for 1,000 years. And as long as we know that and always have it around where we can see it, someday we'll stop making the goddamn funeral pyres and jumping in the middle of them. We pick up a few more people that remember every generation. That gives me chills. I love that. So as we conclude today, I offer 3 elements to carry forward. First, a practice. Dedicate 5 minutes daily to knowing what you actually feel. Like, are you wretched today or are you in glory today? And discuss it alone, in writing, or ideally outside with your source, with your God, right? Like, what do you feel? How is it getting to you today? Are you in the hardest part of it, or are you in a place where you have relief? And part of the magic, part of the essence of surviving this time is actually being in touch with what's going on for you. There's a lot of care systems that ask people to check in with their emotions before the conversation starts. Like, you go around the room and you say, I am sad right now. I am angry right now. I am sad, angry, and afraid right now. Like, I am joyful right now. I am numb right now. I am, what are you right now? Just knowing what it is, and perhaps a little bit of interrogation into why, but speaking to your source about it with your words, with your mouth, with the voice that comes through your chest, where no one else can hear you, but where you can say what's true. And you can ask for help. You can ask for light. You can ask for clarity. No matter what your belief system is, it will come. And then second, a contemplation or a reflection response, right? So it's useful as a writing prompt or as a prompt for a conversation with somebody who makes you feel safe. But the question I have for you is, what are your stabilizing choices and what are your chaos elements, right? Like, where are you experiencing personal chaos right now? And where are you experiencing personal stability right now? Where are you an agent of Uranus right now? Where are you an agent of that chaos right now? And where are you an agent of Saturn? Where are you an agent of stability? And are you creating enough space in your life to tolerate both? Like, I have a much harder time with Saturnian themes than I do with Uranus themes, right? Like, I'm much more comfortable with chaos than I am with structure, with stability, right? So everybody's built differently. So which kind are you? And are you seeking balance, right? Like, while you reach for the thing you're most comfortable with, are you also reaching into the opposing force, so that while they're in a sextile with each other, meaning an opportunity aspect, while they are there together, and they will be for the next 18 months. Well, 18 is probably strong, but they will be for the next 8 months, 8-ish months, 7, 8 months. Like, how can you leverage this opportunity? How can you lean into this opportunity? Knowing what your base instinct is, that you lean towards either stability or chaos. Like, how can you leverage the other side of that equation? That's cool food for thought. And then finally, I want to leave you with a poem, as I always do. This is a poem that I first found in a book many moons ago. It's a book, one of my favorite edited texts. It's called This Bridge Called My Back. And it's edited, it's stories of, it's words of resistance from women of color. And it's old. It's probably published in the 80s is my guess. And one of the editors, a woman named Cherry Moraga, it was also edited by a woman named Gloria Anzaldúa. But Cherry has a poem in it, and I'm going to read just a bit of it to you. I'm going to read the beginning and the end. The beginning starts like this. I am a welder, not an alchemist. I am interested in the blend of common elements to make a common thing. No magic here. Only the heat of my desire to fuse what I already know exists is possible. We plead to each other. We all come from the same rock. We all come from the same rock, ignoring the fact that we bend at different temperatures, that each of us is malleable up to a point. Yes, fusion is possible, but only if things get hot enough. All else is temporary adhesion, patching up. Here's how she ends. I am the welder. I understand the capacity of heat to change the shape of things. I am suited to work within the realm of sparks out of control. I am the welder. I am taking the power into my own hands. I would love to talk to you about your chaos and your stability. I would love to talk to you about your balance. I would love to talk to you about how you're feeling, about how you're engaging, about how you're creating either of these in your life. I'd love to talk to you about your assignment generally. What is it that you're doing to quote Mary Oliver, with this one wild and precious life, right? What meaning are you making of it? And what gifts have you received? To what extent are you still ashamed of things that you were just born into? One of the most powerful things that happens in a chart reading is people are like, oh, that's why I'm like that, right? Like me with my chaos. Like I get that that's just part of how I was built, right? It's part of it's part of the sky I was born under. And so the more I can understand it, the more I can balance it, right? The more I can lean into the parts that would help it feel whole. And so understanding sort of your challenges and then also understanding your gifts and letting them rise up as places that can mark the future for you, can mark the most helpful place for you to go next. I find that readings are also an opportunity to just take a minute out and reflect, but also take a peek at your shadow side, take a peek at the stuff that you fight against in yourself and are afraid to own and claim as yours. And readings can be a real gift in that way. So if you'd like to do that with me, you can find me, the address in the description. So until next time, remember that part of the assignment at this time is to find balance between chaos and stability. Until next time, please remember that while all of this is swirling around us and while these variables have collected in unprecedented ways above us, we have a lot of choices down here. We can take those opportunities or ignore them. We can be ruined by the chaos or rise to it. We can be leveled by the destruction or build inside of it. These are all choices that we have. So until next time, be well, be conscious, and be kind. I'll see you soon.